Bill was asking for a time frame.
We hear you now. Yes, sir.
How about me? Can you hear me?
I hear you, Bill.
Okay. I guess I'll just start talking. I don't know how long I have here with the delay. So my name is Bill Tripp. I'm the Director of Natural Resources and Environmental Policy for the Crook Tribes Department of Natural Resources. And we've been working for a very long time to bring fire back to the people in a way that we've done in our homelands for millennia. Some of that's ceremonial, some of that's very specific to the way our relationship works with the plants, the animals, and the natural environment, and the spirit world, for that matter. And we've gone through a lot of iterations to get into a space to where we can freely practice these activities on a broader landscape. Our For those that don't know where we're located, we're in the extreme corner, northwestern corner of California. Our Aboriginal territory is a little over 1 million acres. We don't have we don't we don't have I don't know what's going on here with this thing. For some reason, it's added me again. So we don't have a lot of trust lands. We recently got about 1,200 acres turned over to us from the Cudimino County Sacred Lands Act. Um, the And within a couple of hours of the president signing that bill, we were out there, burning with about 5 people. Got about 7 acres, burned in a matter of hours after that bill was signed, and it was officially, our place again. But we our Constitution that was approved when we went through the uh, federal recognition process was it included a legal description of that 1 million acre Aboriginal territory, and it applied the jurisdiction to that land base that that ended up overlapping with other jurisdictions. And so it created a unique socio-political environment in which we work. 98% of that landscape being national forest system, our big focus has been relationships with the Forest Service. And so we've, um, I think I hear a little bit of an echo as well. But and the, so yeah, we're working to bring back our ceremonial burning practices and our relationship to our traditional food, fiber, and medicinal resources. So we've had to do a lot of work in regards to relationship building and changes in policy and legal frameworks. I've been burning in my traditional village since I was 4 years old, and things like the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act say that tribes will never give up parental and community control over our education systems. I was brought up through that fire education system in our traditional way. Yet people perceive it as being illegal for us to practice on a broader scales when in fact it isn't. Um, I think it's probably Joe needs to mute. Actually, is probably what's causing the echo. So, so the so sorry, this is a little bit distracting. So we've gone through a process in state law to to establish some things in state law that can help make it a little bit easier. And so we've worked, a lot of, they say that the tribes should not really engage in that state law process without, without there being a true benefit. So really, they don't have any regulatory jurisdiction, but the and the the issues around fire are primarily in civil code. And so it's been an interesting conversation there. And so we've been trying to find pathways where we can work together and not have any one of us have to struggle to think that we're violating our own sovereign space, and that we're actually respecting each other's sovereign space. And so that's been a long road, but we now have a way to cover liability. We've established a gross negligence standard in California, um, and for suppression cost recovery and investigation cost recovery. We've established a agreement in lieu of permitting structure, so the state doesn't have to require permits for the activities that we do on our traditional homelands, um, and that we can self-identify who has the experience required to operate under those agreement structures. So we can truly have our people start to re-engage in these practices and teach our youth and start to make those connections back. It's we never the village I'm from is kind of unique in that my great grandmother's grandfather signed the treaties. That didn't end up getting ratified, but as far as everyone knew, that was that we were good to be here and do whatever, be who we were forever, and there would just be more people here, is how that was understood. And so um, so um, so we just continued on. She never signed any papers having to do with any lands, rights, or title, exchanges. And so she always taught us that original agreement is what stands, and we don't really need to do anything else. And so we continued to burn. And so but over time, the relationships on the federal level become a lot more challenging. And so, but we're working through those still. But we it's vital that we have these connections to fire. If we don't, if we don't carry out that responsibility, that is our human responsibility to this place, then all of those plants and animals and spirit beings will we made deals way back when at the beginning, that we're supposed to be doing these things. And so what we see now is we see declining species. We see we see people get pushed to burn at times a year because of regulatory environments that make us burn when turtles moving up the hill. So and turtle's the one that brought it down a hill for us. And so it's just like the modern environment is completely opposite of the way we're supposed to be looking at things a lot of times. And so, you know, so we operate within a scope of that space we're supposed to in the reproductive cycles. We can burn off grasses in June, but we do it at night. A lot of times air quality issues come into play and say, oh, you got to stop burning at 6 p.m. So you can mitigate for human health concerns. But when you look at the AQI index recommendations, if you do get to the point where it's unhealthy or above, then the recommendation is to stay inside. And inside, when you are inside, you're inside at night. A lot of people are, and you can actually mitigate exposure inside with HEPA filtration. So we've taken a different approach to doing some of these things where we do more burning in the evening and nighttime. And we do supply the community with HEPA filtration. We burn in those windows of time when the grasses will burn, but the leaves under the brush won't, whereas the turtle will be under the brush if they can't make it back to water at night. And so, and the same goes in the February and March. It's, the manzanita is blooming and the queen bee comes out to build energy so she can nest. And so we burn in that time, where I've sat and watched them, and just as the conditions cause the last flame to flicker out, you see that queen bee going back underneath the ground. And so it's for the night, and so the conditions work perfectly to where you are just using moisture gradients, and a lot of times you don't even need water or fire lines. I just burned last week, and burned everything, on a 5-acre parcel that everything that was in the sun, that wasn't grass, got burnt, and it burnt right into the shade line, and it scorched off those encroaching species like Douglas fir out from underneath the white oaks, but it didn't damage the white oaks that are still in their dormant state. And so it's there's a whole lot to all those relationships, and as you go back into those burn areas, the elk come right in, the birds, come right in. The little quail go out into our burns like only as big as 3 acorns, and in June, the indicators present themselves. It's time to go burn that grass, and they're out there, picking around and teaching their young how to find food, like when they're very, very small, like probably even as close as the first few days that they're actually out and about. And so it's not just about food for people, but it's entire food web ecosystems that we are an integral part of. And so I guess with that, I don't know how much more time I say have here per se, but I guess I can open it up for questions. Well,
Hi, Bill. I'm just looking at the Q&A here. First question is, with the post-Columbia disruption of ecological community dynamics across all species, is there any interest in using well-managed domestic animals that mimic the natural migratory patterns of wild ruminants, alongside cultural fire to restore conditions that allow first foods to thrive?
that's a good question. I know in a lot of the there can be some issues with some species. Cattle really trample the ground. They don't really move around in the same way that bison or buffalo and elk and other large ungulates do. Some people do use, goats for fuels reduction and stuff, but then they learn quickly that, they can move poison oak around and establish it everywhere if you're not careful. And so there are a lot of things to consider. Um, you know, in our area, we're fortunate enough to where we've got the elk and the deer and everything just come right in, and and so we don't really look to that too much per se. But I have heard of some folks in other areas being pretty successful with some targeted grazing on on different kinds of invasive species and the like. And time will tell how successful that will be.
Second question, how have you navigated the challenges of getting Western and non-Indigenous partners to understand and respect the timing of sacred necessary burns?
Um, it's been a long road. Technically, everybody likes to shut down all the burning as of February 1st for species like the northern spotted owl. Whereas the spotted owl is a perch and pounce predator, and if that's all brush and understory, they can't access their food. Their young starve. And so it's that relationship with fire in close proximity to where they raise their young that has to happen for them to survive. And and so it's I forgot the question. What's
It was about inviting Western and non-Indigenous partners to respect
oh,
cultural burns, I believe.
yeah, and so it took quite a bit of teaching people about that, and it's that particular example is outlined pretty well in our Cutter climate adaptation plan that is available online, and I don't have the link for you right at hand, but it really describes those kinds of things, along with even in the summer the value of smoke and cooling the river for the salmon and this type of thing. And so, we've built that over, it's been a 30-year long conversation where people actually started to listen and wanting to help and to understand. And so we're at that point now to where even the Forest Service honors what we call as a cultural limited operating period.
Mhm.
It is our in our in our timing, we can burn, or we really have one time a year where we can't burn, and that's when everything's reproducing. And so, at right now, we're probably a week or maybe two out from when the birds actually start to build their nests and do their thing, and at that point we stop. And then we don't start back up again until we get our celestial indicators, and mid June, early July we're able to come back in, and it just fits perfectly with those life cycles of those species in those places.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bill. In respect for time, I just want to mention to everyone, we do see all of your questions. We will be handing them off to the panelists so they can respond to them in the future. And for now, Joe, it's your turn.
Okay, I hope I don't echo really bad like I was earlier. Sounds like I'm echoing.
Do you have an extra mic or speaker that might be on as well?
Like double logged in or something. I don't know what's going on. On my laptop, I don't know.
Is there anybody on a laptop next to you that might be watching this?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Can you check your audio settings, Joe, to make sure that you're connected to the right speaker? Sometimes different virtual settings will auto correct or auto connect.
Yeah, is that any better?
Can you say that again?
Is that any better?
No, there's still an echo.
I'm back. I'm sorry for all these technicals. This is odd. I've never had this problem before.
No, that's okay. Um, I think maybe the best route would be to log off and then log back in, and maybe it'll just like reconnect. We can hope for the best.
Okay, I will leave and come back. And Bill is more than capable to answer many of these questions. So.
You want me to continue on with the next question while he's doing that, or?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's see. Oh, we had an attendee here who had her hand up. Tashina, if you wanted to speak really quickly. Oh, didn't have your hand up. Okay, all good. So next question would have been, can you describe some burn techniques? Or Joe, are you ready?
I think I'm ready now. It's weird. I
Oh,
think I was double logged in somehow.
Sounds great, Joe. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen, get back on track here. Let's see, do you guys see a PowerPoint?
Not. Oh, there it goes.
I'm terrible with this. Let's see if you. Oh, I guess I'll just keep going because we're way behind on time. So anyway, Ayukui, Nick now Joe Hostler. I work for the Uduk tribe. As Kaduk is upriver and Uduk is downriver. Um, Happy to be here with my esteemed colleague, and he's actually my wife's cousin too. So we're all related one way or another. But Yurok, we are a little bit downriver from Kaduk. We're up in Northwest California to give people bearings. We're in the very northwest tip of California, about halfway between Sacramento or San Francisco and Portland, Seattle. Anyway, we are a coastal tribe and a river tribe. So we are our words for ourself actually are Pulikla, a river, and Nur, coastal. Yuduk is actually a Kaduk word. So as I mentioned, downriver, upriver. We're the largest tribe with 6,400 members, I think it is now. And we are fortunate. We do have a large reservation. It's 1 mile each side of the river, from the mouth of the river up to Witchpeck, and then Kaduk territory is just upriver from us, and then Hoopaw is up the Trinity River from us. We have a large reservation, 56,000 acres. Some of that's fee, some of it's trust. But we've also recently acquired 47,000 acres of fee land on and adjacent to the reservation. So on this map, you can see some of the land, but we've been getting quite a bit of our land back. And so we're fortunate that we have a reservation. I work for our environmental department, kind of like our EPA program. Um, and so to give it some context about the work that I do, I work for our environmental program and doing climate research and health connections between the environment and the health. And so try to protect the environment for tribal membership and future generations. We have a number of divisions in our EPA program. We have water, air quality, solid waste, all those things. But I do a lot of research in health and climate. And so um, a few years ago, we started working on an adaptation plan, which gives some context of the work that I do. Um, Being that this is supposed to be about climate change and wildfire, we all are fairly, those in California or on the West Coast know that how prevalent and how big wildfires have gotten. We call them age of megafires. So all the fires and just keep getting bigger and bigger each year, more costly, more deadly, more severe. Luckily, here on the Yurok res, we haven't had any major fires on our reservation, but it's all around us. We have large land, Forest Service, Park Service, all those areas around us have burned, and we get a lot of wildfire smoke in the summer. So we get these really the bottom picture on the right of my screen here. You can see that the sun turned orange in the daytime back in that was during COVID, but I think that was in 2021. So anyway, but climate change is here. It's affecting us, affects our health, affects our people, floods, disasters. The picture on the left with all the dead fish was actually a man-made problem. Back in 2002, we had the fish kill, which led to a within the Klamath River Basin, our Klamath River tribes. We all realize like, hey, the fish are sick and we're not taking care of our environment. We need to do more. And so we all kind of rallied together and started working on decommissioning the Klamath River dams. And so you may have heard in the news how had a victory, many years in the making, but it's a largest dam decommissioning in, I believe, the world or America anyway. But we have a mostly free-flowing Klamath River. The Trinity still is dammed, which is a larger tributary. But nevertheless, climate change is here. It's affecting our life ways. We're as indigenous people, we're connected to our environment. Subsistence foods are still a major part of our diet. We still eat a lot of salmon, a lot of deer. Traditional foods are acorns. The acorn. We make a mush out of the acorns. And anyway, climate change is affecting our life ways, and it's a serious threat to our traditional ways. And then trying to realize that climate change is affecting us. I was talking to some of our membership originally and just, surveying people saying, hey, with all these, wildfires, droughts, fish kills, all these problems, all the things in the ocean, all these changes in weather, all these things that affect how we get our traditional foods, our health and well-being, our mental health, all these things impact us. Pretty much everybody was just like, we've been here for thousands of years and we have to continue. Our ancestors survived harder times than us. They've been through genocide, been through relocations, been through massacres, been through all these traumas, but we're still here. And largely because we've kept to our cultures, we've kept our traditional ways, and that's how we've survived, and we adapt. And so that's how we carry ourselves forward today, even. And so, in dealing with our adaptation plan, oh yeah, sorry, try to throw this presentation together here, just a little bit this morning. So I apologize if it's all over the place. But we had a pretty broad-reaching adaptation plan. We talked to the community numerous times, talked with our tribal leadership, interviewed a number of elders to get input about, how our environment is changing and ways that people think that we should act. Um, Dealing with drinking water, as you know, many tribes say, water is life. That we have to take care of our relations, our plants and animal relatives. And so when I was talking to some of our elders, a lot of them just talked about as we move forward, it really gives me guidance throughout all the work that I do is that, our ancestors talked about, and our elders talk about respect is a, like one of the most important values that we have. Respect for all life, respect for, plants and animals and the water, and related to that is trust. And so if you want to learn TEK as the word becomes, you have to act trustworthy. So it's a responsibility to share knowledge. And so when we share things, you have to act trustworthy, I guess, in a way. You have to earn that knowledge, and then it's a responsibility to carry it forward. And then also too, we are, we shaped our environment. Our ancestors created the environment that we have, and we impact our environment. It impacts us. If we have a healthy environment, we have healthy people. And so if we're not healthy, then our environment isn't healthy. And if our environment isn't healthy, then we're not healthy. So it's all connected. And then throughout contact, we've only had contact here on the North Coast since about 18, was it significantly about 1850, the gold rush. So anyway, but since that time, many of our plants and animals have really degraded. And so as it's just gone downhill, we have memories of what it was like once upon a time. And so my work in doing restoration and planning for the future is to try and make it how our ancestors, as best we can, to make it how we can. And so anyway, yeah, and then so another value is just reciprocity, that we do not always just take things, that we give back. We have to take care of the earth, and it'll take care of us. And then intergenerational knowledge. As Indigenous people, we have, our elders teach our younger generations, and elders learn from younger people as well. So it's not just a one way; it's all, cyclical in a way. So, and then, TK is the term is it's our life ways. It's how we live our life. It's not some abstract thing that is in the past. It's what we live today, and it's what we carry in the future. So those are all just some things that our elders expressed and wanted to share. So whenever I talk about this stuff, I try to remember, try to rem try to share these teachings and these values with others, so that we remember who we are, and that helps us carry it, at least from those that have trained me to carry these things forward. And so we have this really big adaptation plan. It's really big, but the big thing about it is that, I mean, it's super long. It's like 300 pages, but we went through a lot of community surveys and whatnot, and so it all relates into community connections. And so as some of our elders mentioned, and sorry, I have poison oak, so I keep itching, but we have just to learn from our grandparents, don't waste time. Our grandparents aren't here, or none of us are here for all that long. So make opportunities to learn while we can. And one of our elders mentioned too is that we need to connect to each other. That nowadays we don't visit with each other, that, we need to make time to support each other, to talk with each other, help each other through day-to-day things. We're so focused on our computers and phones and whatever that we lose that interpersonal connection that we used to have. You would actually visit with your neighbors, help them out. And so we don't really do that as much as we used to. Those are all adaptation measures that help us, with our current problems. These have helped to carry us through time, and they help us carry us forward. Um, and then, so as I mentioned, like our adaptation plan, part is just context of the work that I'm been working on, and since did this a few years ago. And if anybody wants to look this up, we have a bunch of handouts. The one interesting thing one facet that we tried to focus on within our adaptation plan was dealing with the impact of health. And so when we started, there was a pretty bad drought about 10, 15 years ago, and so it was really impacting our drinking water. So we have a lot of very rural community. A lot of people actually get the water from wells and just springs and creeks and stuff. And so traditionally those were safe drinking water sources. It's so mostly pristine that, you could just drink out of the creek for the most part. And so it's not that way anymore. And so as we're realizing these things are changing, we tried to realize, people have gastrointestinal problems, people have physical health, you know, um, rashes, all these other things that are happening. Changes in our subsistence diets have changed, and our people of being here for thousands of years, last 150 years, and drastic change of diet and our genetic memory, or whatever you want to call it. Those are pretty abrupt changes in our diet, how we get our food. Traditionally, we would be out in our environment, exercising, gathering food, connecting to our landscapes. Now we don't do that. We go to the grocery store. And so, it's not as healthy physically, because we're not actually exerting ourselves to get that subsistence. And then also too, another fast that we had was mental health. Our people have been through genocide, and our and those things. And as climate change happens, these things happen. You get a drastic extreme weather event or something. The impact, you have a mega flood or whatever. That impacts people's well-being, and it carries those things forward. We have negative coping strategies. So many Native communities are really, we have negative coping measures that people self-medicate because we have these intergenerational problems from, boarding schools, from all these problems that we have, and then all the environmental things on top of it. And so we just try to figure out, how all these things impact our people from different angles and different community members. We have different, elders, adults, ceremonial participants, people that, are active in our ceremonies, have different exposures to different toxins, to different whatever impacts. And so, our subsistence are hunters, fishers, basket weavers. Excuse me, they all have different exposures. And so, as we go through all that work, we really just try to name it, kind of narrow all that down, because it's a lot of stuff. We kind of came up with a theme called "Hey with Check," is a Yurok word that means I am healthy. And so, try to keep that in mind as we need to connect, some of the themes that we came from is that we need to restore our Klamath River, which I talked about a little bit. I mean, it's still ongoing. The dams came down, but there's still a lot of work to be done about restoring our river, our tributaries. restoring our forest lands. That's what we've been working on. The tribe was able to, as I mentioned, to get quite a bit of land back, and so we're doing some meadow restoration. And then, connecting our people to our communities, getting out and gathering with, multi-generations. See, skipped a couple here, but yeah, just talking about the dams, and then we were able to reacquire like 47,000 acres, or I forget. We keep adding more. We do versions of. So we're footing the bill with loans with carbon credits. So we are able to pay these millions of dollars of loans to buy the land back with carbon. So we convert the land management from industrial timber to carbon sequestration, and that helps keep how we're able to get the land back. So and as we got the land back, one example is, we've been restoring, me and a number, I'm just one of many people working on it, doing a meadow restoration on one of these, historically was a, like about a 300-acre meadow area. And then the timber company acquired it throughout, last 100 and something years. They logged it, planted it, relogged it, kept doing that over and over and over. And so now they kept planting trees in these meadows, and so traditionally we would spend our times out hunting and gathering in these areas, camping out way out in the ridges, far away from the river, and you'd have family interactions. So anyway, we're working on trying to restore the prairies as much as we can incrementally. It's pretty labor intensive, expensive to pull out these big trees. Some of them are merchantable, a lot of them are not. There's a lot of bear damage as well. And then one of the other examples that we do that is once, utilizing cultural fire. I guess the point of what we're trying to talk about here is, Bill excellently, talks about it better than anybody else I know, is that fire is our ancestors' tool, our best tool that we have, our most effective tool that we can use to restoring our land. So, um, we had fire at different times of the year, very, very, very very intently, very carefully, for to benefit our plants and animals. And let's see. So, as I mentioned before about land back, is that something I've been working on. It's gonna skip ahead here. Is that on the res we were able to reacquire? There's a lady growing weed on the res. Degrading the environment, and we were able to get this land back. And actually, the last couple years, I've been working at trying to restore this parcel back and get it back to historical conditions. And so there's some really nice, beautiful legacy tan oak trees in there. And so we take the forest and manage it kind of how you'd manage a garden. So we manage thin out the forest because it's so overgrown with the suppression of fire. Everything just grows and grows and grows. So you have all these plants and trees and shrubs and everything that's really thick. It's thicker than what our ancestors knew. So we remove those, add fire, and it gets it back to our historical landscape conditions. And then, so as I mentioned, example of, thinning out and then burning. You call them entries. So you do one entry is like thinning out the forest, doing another entry is pile burning, and another entry is doing controlled burning, prescribed burning. And then once we get back to a certain state, we can get to, this is just a diagram from a study I've been doing with the Forest Service. Um, my friend Frank Lake, who many people know, and Jonathan Long from the Forest Service. Um, Basically just showing how we have these trends of, you have to the left, lower left, you have a really overgrown forest with, really small tree diameter, super thick trees. You thin the forest out, add some fire, add out some, remove some bigger trees, add more fire, and you get to a historical landscape. And eventually you can get to a regime where it's not so difficult to do burning. You don't have to have big fire crews and, all this stuff. You can just burn it traditionally, as like Bill was mentioning, you just have family burns, you have individuals maintain landscape the way that our people did in the past. And so, anyway, for sake of time, well, that's it, I guess. But yeah, I didn't talk a whole lot about fire. Bill knows it so much more than myself. He's done a lot of work behind the scenes. And so we do cultural burning on the UROC res. I issue burn permits. I think we were going to burn yesterday, but now the birds are out, so we stopped. And anyway, but yeah, we're using fire as the best tool that we have, and just relearning and remembering what our ancestors knew, and making our people healthy and connecting ourselves to our environment, making it how we're supposed to be. So I'll stop there, I guess, and I'm sure there's questions. So
So thank you so much for that, Joe. Oh, I have an echo. Hold up.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bill, you were starting to talk when I jumped on, but I know I like only talk about the policy changes that you've worked on with the state and with the feds as well. And I don't know, I mean, that's always really valuable information to know because a lot of tribes don't really know how to exercise their sovereignty, um, and the things that go into getting good fire back on the ground. I don't know. I guess that's a question that I have for Bill, I guess, but um,
I don't know. I guess I can answer that. Yeah. So um, we've got certain timelines here. We've got a short-term authority that's going to last for the next few years in California, and so one of the things we're really trying to do right now is roll out SB 310 agreements through with tribes throughout the state, and operating through other entities like the Indigenous Stewardship Network to put out Rekindling Fire and Culture awards for capacity building, to try to get fire back in the hands of people is part of that. And so we've been building network upon network connections to try to make all this stuff happen, and it's happening, and philanthropy's ready to step up in a major way, and starting to replicate some of these things in other areas throughout the country, is hopefully going to be another part of that. But right now, a heavy focus for us is to take the example of the SB 310 process and replicate that so we can make that a permanent authority at the state level, and then work on addressing the barriers that still exist at the federal level. When they passed the Weeks Act of 1911, that was the last year we burned, did our ceremonial burning practice on Off Hill Mountain, which is a landscape level burn, and it you know the Weeks Act didn't authorize the agencies to extinguish a right. But and it authorized the coordination of federal and state wildland fire management programs, and programs don't have an authority to extinguish tribal rights. And so that's a major education process that we're going to have to push through all of the systems in this country, if not the world. And so that's a major challenge. It's no small feat to do that. But um, short-term target is making sure SB 310 processes become permanent in the state of California and hopefully replicate in other states.
I see a couple questions in the chat, Dre, or in the Q&A.
yeah, I saw some in there. There was a question about state and federal regulations,
Okay,
restrictive.
so for the first question that we have, I'm sorry, did I cut you off, Joe? Okay, so for this is a question for either or both speakers. Is there any TEK practices that are analogs for the POW burning practices used by modern fire forestry operations for wildland fuels reduction or slash management?
You want me to take that one, Joe? You're muted.
Um, I think you answer those better than myself, the policy stuff.
Okay. Well, yeah, this is one of those things that bridges, policy and practice, and so there is really no, quote, like direct um, uh, transfer, I guess, in indigenous cultural fire management practices to the types of pile burning that goes on today. Other than when you're looking at it from the perspective of needing to address the effects of the fire exclusion paradigm before, as part of the process of revitalizing our indigenous fire use practices. In a lot of places, we need to get out there and we need to reduce those fuels so we can create conditions conducive of revitalizing those practices. And some of those did include piles, particularly in tan oak, fall burning. People would be out gathering, primarily women would be out gathering acorns and making little piles of breaking down the dead wood, that smokes a lot. So you don't bring it home and you don't use it to heat and cook. And so you burn it out there on the landscape. And so that's, part of that practice is making piles, maybe throwing some of the buggy acorns on it and then lighting them as you leave at night and letting it burn a mosaic through the duff. And so yeah, I mean, there's no direct correlation to scale, but it's kind of a vital activity. Traditionally, a lot of those non-tan oak related wood type species would be brought home, for heating, cooking, smoking fish and whatnot. So
Another question for Joe, because this was doing while you were speaking at 4:46. What are your thoughts on incorporating invasive species into traditional diets as a means to manage the land?
Yeah, I don't necessarily do that a whole lot, but I mean, we're adaptable. So, I mean, if there's something that's useful, I'm sure that we could look at it. I'm not, a plant. I'm not like a super good plant person, but I know there are a number of species that are naturalized. They're invasives, but they're naturalized and they are beneficial for some things and, medicinal plants and the like. But I don't have them myself. I'm generally not opposed to them, I guess, in a sense. But, our people are adaptable. That's how we survived. So I don't know if that answers it well enough, but it's an option.
Good question. That's a good answer. And I'm gonna get to two more because I see the time is 4:56. This is a question for either. As a tribe that is interested in starting up our own indigenous food sovereignty program, forestry program, what would be the first step for us other than acquiring funding?
I think partly just connecting to your landscapes. A lot of traditional food knowledge has been lost, especially, our changes in diets. Many communities are not connected to their places anymore. Some tribes are relocated. So partly just connecting to your environment and making what you have available. You don't have to have, big, route of money or whatever, but just connecting to what's available. And a great at there's invasives that are good, then hey, pick a bunch of Himalaya blackberries or whatever, those are survival.
It's true. That's very true. Do you see more and more collaboration between state and federal and tribal governments to manage these resources? Are they being used by which state, federal, and tribal governments can come together to share information to try to reach understandings?
Phil knows that very well. You want to answer that?
yeah, yeah, it's happening, and under this new era of shared stewardship or whatever, that they started calling it, instead of well, not necessarily instead of the National Cohesive Wildland Fire Management Strategy was established specifically for this purpose, is to have more local level engagement, of states, tribes, federal, local government, and community, even private landowners. And so, in determining what resilience meant in their local areas and how they wanted to build programs and partner together to to do this work. It's the challenge comes in the scale of activity that's needed, given the length of time we've gone through in the fire exclusion paradigm. That this is we often end up with the pendulum swing of in these programs that are going to be needed to sustain this. And so our argument is yeah, we need the investment in a large scale professional workforce with NWCG qualifications and all that stuff to get out there and start getting some acres treated, some prescribed fire on the ground, maybe some prescribed fire with cultural objectives incorporated, ideally, and then be able to start, following up as a maintenance strategy at the landscape scale with cultural burning, with a loosened up regulatory framework. And so, in California, we do have those partnerships progressing. In a lot of cases, the states, federal and tribal and local are aligned in our territory. In other states, throughout the West, I think Oregon, Washington have replicated the Prescribed Fire and Cultural Burning Claims Fund, although it may not have been so strong on the cultural burning side because there are not any tribal champions entering the conversation. And so some of those pieces are dropping off. And so it is a challenge to stay up on top of all of those conversations. But there are a lot of partners that are working in that space that can have those, and just have check-in points. And so there are ways to build relationships and allies and networks to make the change that we're trying to achieve. But and there is a lot of movement in Oregon, California, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado right now. And I'm not as familiar with the East, but the Southeast kind of approaches the scene as more of a right of the people already anyway. So it's a little easier to break down those barriers, from what I understand over there.
I'd like to just add one profound thing I've heard Bill say in the past is that Kaduk has been, to get land back, it's not just actually having the land, it's actually controlling the land or making decisions about it. And so they've been really creative and smart about working with the Forest Service, working with the people who manage their ancestral lands. And so they're able to get the land back in that sense. So, working with those partners and making opportunities to have those decisions, even though you don't, physically own the land, you're able to manage it in a different way. So it's hats off to you guys for that.
Yeah, so hats off to you all as well and to everyone that was on today's call. I do want to take this time to acknowledge Joel, and Bill. You got a lot of kudos and love in the chat. If this was like one of our regular calls, I'd be asking people to use those emojis to show their appreciation. So thank you so much for carving out this time to speak with us. This conversation will be continued. We are looking to have like some smaller talks where we can get into work groups to iron these details a little bit more out. Maybe even do a site visit. Partner with some tribes as we'll be doing some cultural burning. See if they be willing to bring some of those frontline emergency management out to like show them for those tribes that are interested. So we don't want the conversation to end here. So please complete that evaluation and let us know like what other questions do you have around this, because we don't want it to stop here. And if you have best practices that your tribe has used and you want to share them, please let us know. NIHB is creating a repository where we can highlight you. We're not doing the work, but it is our job to make sure that you get the acknowledgement, and you get the opportunities to speak in engagements, to speak on bigger platforms, at national conferences, at ENTHC. So please, if this is something of interest of you, please consider submitting an abstract for ENTHC. Those proposals will be opening very soon. But other than that, please complete the evaluation. I want to thank our speakers. I want to thank all 150 plus that attended today. So that was half of our registrants. So thank you so much. Y'all have a blessed day. Drink your water. Smile. It kills the cancer cells. Go love on yourself, love on someone else, and stay blessed. Everyone take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.